Earth is bad for life. And evidence of that is, look at the fossil record. 99% of all species that ever lived are now extinct.
Come on, bro. That's huge. That much life has died here? The most inhabitable God created and it was good Earth? Pretty tough stuff. Think about it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Neil deGrasse Tyson's sharpest arguments against religion. Let's waste no time. Here we go.
There was a philosopher commenting on miracles, and I'm going to mangle the quote, but he said something like, miracles are so unlikely, bordering on impossible, that if you do encounter something that you cannot explain, not only from your own base of knowledge, but is unexplainable given any base of knowledge yet acquired on Earth, it's more likely that you simply discovered a new law of physics than that there is a divine miracle that was performed in front of you.
Right. Do you believe in God?
Me?
Creator?
Yeah, so I'm, the more I look at the universe, just the less convinced I am that there is something benevolent going on. So if your concept of a creator is someone who's all powerful and all good, that's not an uncommon pairing of powers that you might ascribe to a creator. All powerful and all good. And I look at disasters that afflict Earth and life on Earth.
Yeah.
Volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, disease, pestilence, congenital birth defects. You look at this list of ways that life is made miserable on Earth by natural causes. And I just ask, how do you deal with that? So philosophers rose up and said, if there is a God, God is either not all powerful or not all good. I have no problems if, as we probe the origins of things, we bump up into the bearded man. If that shows up, we're good to go. Okay? Not a problem.
Oh.
There's just no evidence of it. And this is why religions are called faiths, collectively.
Look, I'd like to be proven wrong. It'd be great to know the party's not over when it ends.
Because you believe something in the absence of evidence. That's what it is. That's why it's called faith. Otherwise, we would call all religions evidence.
Look, I know so many Christians who try to defend the word faith to not mean in the absence of evidence. But in Hebrews 11, I believe it's in chapter 11 where it's describing this, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You're hoping for something you haven't seen, you have no evidence of that thing. Like, I can have faith that I'll have $1 million, right? But unless I see the evidence actually showing me this, technically, it's just saying you're hoping for something you really don't have the evidence for. You're putting your hope in it, though. And they always like to argue, no, we have the evidence. But if you actually read the rest of the chapter, it's going through all these other narratives in the past that are myths, legends and myths. Abraham and all these promises that God promised him. He didn't have any evidence. God called him out of the land of Ur. No evidence. I'm going to give you this land. And your people are going to be like the seeds of the sand of the sea, the stars of heaven. You're going to have an innumerable amount of descendants. And he had no evidence to support that, yet he still believed it. These are the examples they give. So faith is that. When you hear apologists say, no, don't say there's no evidence, we have evidence. No, dude, you literally have text. You have ancient stories, including the Gospels, stories, and within those stories contain eyewitness supposed witnessing of his resurrection in a story. You don't pick apart Heracles' story or Dionysus and Euripides Bacchae and then try to die on the hill of the details in there because you know you're dealing with a genre of material that isn't historical. Anyway, enough about what I have to say. Let's hear what Neil says.
But we don't, for exactly that reason. So I'm given what everyone describes to be the properties that would be expressed by an all-powerful being in the gods that they worship. I look for that in the universe and I don't find it.
Makes sense.
1,000 years ago, the intellectual center of the world was Baghdad. Baghdad. Europe was busy disemboweling heretics at the time. Baghdad was open to all thought at the time, between AD 800 and 1100, around there. If you look at the advances that unfolded in that period, in that location, it includes the invention of algebra. Algebra is an Arabic word. Algorithm is an Arabic word. 2/3 of the stars in the night sky that have names have Arabic names. How does that happen? Where did the naming rights come from? It came from the fact that at that time, huge advances in the Middle East, in Baghdad in particular, was unfolded in engineering, mathematics, especially mathematics, astronomy, navigation, physiology. And you say, well, why is that so? If you look at what was going on, they were open to all lines of thought.
Yeah.
Muslims, Christians, there were doubters back then. Today we would call them atheists. They would all come around a table and share ideas. If you have some philosophy that's got holes in it, someone's going to find it. And you're going to challenge you on those ideas. And what happens is the conversation ratchets up. You discard what doesn't work and you keep what does. And when you do that, you make discoveries, and you make discoveries rapidly. And at the time, that period drew to a close. If you read history books, they'll typically describe sort of the sacking of Baghdad. It was a bad time for the city. And they say, oh, it all came to an end. However, the Islamic culture rose at other times later. And in those other times, science and engineering discoveries were not a part of it.
That's sad.
So he asked, why not? You got the cultural heritage. Why doesn't it show up again? And then you got to dig a little deeper from the sacking of Baghdad, and you find out there was a Muslim cleric, Al-Ghazali was his name, who was to Islam what St. Augustine was to Christianity. St. Augustine kind of laid out the rules for how to be a good Christian at the time. A lot of people were practicing it in their own way. He codified it. He was a religious scholar, figured it out according to his own read, told everybody how to behave. There's the book. You follow this, you're a good Christian. Al-Ghazali said, you follow this, you're a good Muslim. In that text included the assertion, which gained influence socially, but then politically, so then it had power of influence. In there was the assertion that mathematics and the manipulation of numbers was the work of the devil.
That's insane. I can't get over that. Just nutty how religion would work against the advancements.
The entire enterprise collapsed and never recovered. It has not recovered since. If you look at the number of...
By the way, I'm taking his word for this, right? I know people who pick these things apart and try to go, oh, he's wrong about this detail, he's wrong about that detail. There's a reason Islam doesn't have that advancement in science today. And if this is one of the reasons, then okay. But again, they're still stuck in this older model of religion instead of being open to this enlightenment, to the advancement of these things. And I think they're gradually, some places are starting to do something in a progressive manner, but we got some work to do.
Of Muslims who have won the Nobel Prize in the sciences, it's one. Number of Jews who have won the Nobel Prize, 1/4 of all Nobel Prizes in science have been won by Jews. How many Muslims in the world? 1.3 billion. How many Jews in the world? 15 million tops. So you look at what effect the culture of discovery and learning can have on what you discover about the natural world. It's extraordinary.
Which means among those 1.3 billion, there has to be some geniuses that are restricted because of the ideology. Imagine if they didn't have that ideological prison in which they had to stay within, but were able and capable of having enough freedom and liberty to explore like Western society tries to encourage. If they had that, how many more advancements and how many more Nobel Prize winners would there be in the Islamic world as many humans fit that category? I'd also be curious to know the number of Christians that fit this as well.
So just because you're making discoveries...
Because Christianity has definitely changed in the past 300-400 years.
...doesn't mean it's forever. And I look at the 20th century in America as a period of great discovery. Then I see forces now operating against it. Then I look at the history of the consequences of this, and I see America just simply fading into insignificance. No, it's not off of a cliff. It's just a slope. And every next day you're a little bit further down on the slope. You barely notice it, right? Until one day you can't see over the hill that you just came from. And then you try to make do with what you have down here. And then you find out it's the rest of the world making the inventions and not you. You're trailing, no longer leading. You're not even abreast with what's going on. You're running behind trying to catch up.
We've talked about science and religion like our whole lives, my friend and I. And I would describe to him, I would go to a mountaintop to observe the universe. And back in the day, it was an ordeal. I mean, you would take trains, planes, automobiles. You would invert to live nocturnally. Right. You would set up the telescope. Your sunset was the beginning of your day when it was near the end of everyone else's day. And then it's you, the telescope, and the cosmos in the eerie silence of the night. But there's the din of the electronics driving the telescope juxtaposed with it. And I would look up and I would feel very deeply connected to the cosmos. He was quick to say, that's like a religious experience. And so I said, okay, except I wasn't thinking God. I was thinking this is a magnificent, glorious universe.
That it's the same thing, in my opinion. I think believers attribute it to something beyond. And both of us are looking at the phenomena or experiencing phenomena, but they attribute agency, and the other doesn't need to attribute agency, and they still have a significant depth to it.
Yes, but you were.
I have the privilege of studying.
You beheld that scene with awe. You were in awe of the universe, and often that. And I started using all the same words: the awe and the majesty, right?
And I was humbled in its presence.
Yes,
I wasn't prostrate in its presence, but I was humbled. Now, here's what I found. That people with religious experiences, typically, there's something they experience that they cannot explain.
Right. That's normally the case.
That's normally the case, correct? Yes. Of any kind, okay? Yeah, an apparition or this or that and the other.
Right.
So I have seen things that if I did not know astrophysics, physics, geology, atmospheric sciences, and just basically the laws of physics, I probably would have rapidly called the police department to try to get somebody to investigate what I was looking at.
That'd be my brother. My brother. I feel like Kurt would do that.
Or I would be on my knees in awe, wondering what mysterious mythical forces were operating. So I don't know whether my knowledge of what is possible in this universe has precluded me from having some religious experiences that others might have.
Okay.
All right. This is in response to the people out there who say, oh, Earth is just perfect for life. Oh, what a haven in all the universe, just right. It's not just right.
So this is
every opportunity it gets, it tries to kill us. Add it up. The tsunamis, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the asteroids, the 3/4 of the Earth. If I drop you butt naked, you're dead 10 minutes later.
Yeah, think about it. 3/4 of the Earth is not habitable without absolute preparation. You probably need to wear fur in 3/4 of the Earth. And then in other places, there's no water, right? So you're in these absolutely inhabitable locations on our planet that is perfect for life.
Because something eats you, okay?
Okay, he said for something eats you. I'm thinking in terms of cold or heat.
So this is the anti-Gaia prophecy?
Anti-Gaia, yeah. Earth is bad for life. And evidence of that is, look at the fossil record. 99% of all species that ever lived are now extinct.
Come on, bro. That's huge. That much life has died here? The most inhabitable God created and it was good Earth? Pretty tough stuff. Think about it.
That is not the signature of a planet that is in love with life.
Why does religion have such a persistent hold on human thought despite all that we know of science?
Yeah, I think there
several ways one can address that question. Let me address it in a consider not long ago when so much of the Western world was the state was the religion. And we have actually moved quite a distance from that compared with 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, the era of the Inquisition and this sort of thing. And so to say that it has such a grip, it has a fraction of the grip that it once did on the operations of human conduct and of society. So the real question is, if implicit in that is, given what we know of science, why would religion still have any grip at all? Mm-hmm. Not just why does it still have a big grip? Because it's not a big grip.
Right.
When you look in the developed world. So, in fact, most of Europe are just there are whole countries where religion has essentially disappeared entirely. And the countries are not full of violence, and it's just the assumption that you have to be religious to be moral is a false one. It's empirically false because you just look around in places where that's the case. So, so that's one fact. And pull away from that a little. There's plenty of what goes on in religious texts that has tremendous value to how to think about life and how to treat one another. Yep. In fact, Jefferson created what was essentially what you can think of as Thomas Jefferson, the Jefferson Bible. I don't know if you ever heard of this. He went through the Bible, and I think both the Old and the New Testaments, and he crossed off everything that was sort of mythical, magical, things that clearly violated known laws of nature, and kept the rest, and said, here is the stuff of the Bible that should have value to any modern person going forward.
By the way, this was in the rationalist movement. So there was a well-known thing that they recognized, even Christian rationalists, right? These are Christians often. Jefferson, I think, was a deist. But either way, most of the rationalists were Christians. These were Christians picking at their own text. And they said, look, Jesus couldn't have walked on water, so it must be misunderstood, because they agreed with the science. And the rationalists saw the science and said, hey, we have to explain these miracles in light of that. Some may have said it was mythical, which I tend to agree. But, there's this idea that if we just take away the myth out of the text, what's left is history. That's a whole nother video, and that's problematic in and of itself.
If you look at people who are religious today, who are not in conflict with science, they have viewed their religious text as a spiritual, something that gives them spiritual support, not as a science textbook. The conflict in society is when you have those who are still religious, who want to use their religious text as their access point to understanding the natural world. And persistent efforts of the past to make that happen have just simply failed. The Bible does not work as a science textbook. In fact, Galileo knew this, and he himself was a religious man. He's famously quoted as saying, the Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. So on that scale, the conflict comes about when that subset of the religious community feels threatened by scientific discoveries that are different from how they interpret what the natural world should be in the Bible.
I think it's that point where you get to the concept of the God of the gaps. You go, we do not understand this. Science takes us so far, but we don't understand anything beyond that. Therefore, that's God. The stuff that we don't get, that's God. And the trouble with that is the moment that you actually go, no, we do understand that now. Is people going, well, did God just go away then? And it goes back, nice simple things like the rainbow. The point where you go, well, the rainbow actually, it's an optical effect. It's not something magic that gets put up in the sky to memorialize the flood.
Plus, did you know that everyone sees a unique rainbow?
No.
That's right. The rainbow is an optical effect for the person who sees it. So if you stand 10 feet to my left, you see a different rainbow than I see.
It's a remarkable, fun fact about rainbows.
My favorite fun fact about rainbows is the fact that they were originally believed to have 6 color bands, but that Newton added indigo and violet.
Newton liked
his 7.
the number 7. He had a mystical feeling for the number 7. Throws in indigo that no one else sees.
Yeah, nobody. I mean, hands up here. Who actually goes indigo, violet? There's the indigo. You just go purple.
Yeah, exactly.
Blue, purple. But
so another thing about the rainbow, because each rainbow is unique to the viewer, it can only be a rainbow that is exactly face on to you. You've never seen a rainbow that was like at an oblique angle. Think about it. They're exactly hemispherical in front of you. That's why you can never get to the base of the rainbow. Because that would mean your perspective on it would change. That's what makes it a good place to hide the gold. Okay? In case you didn't.
That is wonderful. Nils is great at teaching.
No. All right.
Are you outing yourself here as an unbeliever in leprechaun? People have been burned at stakes.
Indeed am.
He's an leprechaunist.
And another thing, you mentioned the God of the gaps. In a free society, a free pluralistic society, where the freedom of the expression of religion is constitutionally protected, which was a fundamental part of why America was so attractive to immigrants from around the world, whose religious differences were not being supported in their hometown. I will never be one to tell you what you should believe or what you should not believe. What I will say is that if you want to say that where we don't understand things, that's where God rests, that's where God operates, the God of the gaps argument, because I get asked that all the time. What was around before the universe? I don't know. Must have been something, God. So they got to stick in God where we're not there yet. And I just say, we got top people working on that. It's a current frontier.
Right.
We're not there yet. And given the history of the moving frontier, where people had previously said, well, God must be operating, we're long past that. Those explanations have come. And so there's no compelling reason to say God did it and then sort of give up and go on to the next problem. My issue with the God of the gaps is that if you feel that way, you should not be writing the science curriculum of a classroom.
This is exactly the problem with the guy, the well-known Christian anti-abiogenesis scientist, from Rice University. Help me out in the comments off the top of my head. I cannot remember. That he's constantly critiquing abiogenesis, and not like scientifically in the sense that we're just trying to poke holes. He may be doing some of that, but he's working against the entire category. And I think it's his creationist background that does that. Whereas if you're going to critique it to get closer to the facts, but with a forward progression on knowing we're trying to get the answer to figure out the origin of life. This guy has a magical outlook. And I like what Neil's saying here, because God is the greatest hide-and-go-seek player of all time. And as soon as you go where God's supposed to be, he's not there. And as soon as you go to where God's supposed to be next, he's not there. It's not there. They aren't there. So God keeps finding a way to hide, and in terms of the reality of him. And it's a problem.
Okay? That's all. Okay?
He's talking about the guy from Rice University in the sense, not directly. It's not like he is directly speaking about him there. This is like people like that.
Because if you do, you are undermining the very process of what science is all about. Because the God of the gaps principle is like it's a philosophy of ignorance, whereas science is a philosophy of discovery. And that's an important distinction between the two. Mm-hmm. And if you remove that foundation for what builds science, you are undermining the capacity of your culture, of your nation, to compete technologically in the 21st century. So it is not without consequence to have conduct of that way.
Wow.
In fact, the people who say they are dying in their hospital bed and they lift up and they see themselves, They look back on themselves from
that's
above.
a very common experience.
Yeah, very common. So you got the experiment for that, okay? You got the experiment. You set up a ledge above the bed, okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, these are people who had near-death experiences, right? They saw themselves and then they went back. So you set a ledge up above the bed, and then you write something, a simple saying like "roses are red" or "the sky is blue." Okay, you put that on top. Don't tell the person who is dying. When they say they went up and saw themselves, they would see this thing that you wrote and get them to tell you what it said.
Oh, that's rough.
That would be evidence. That's what I'm saying. That would be evidence that they actually came up.
That they came out, they were looking down physically on their own body. Yes, exactly.
I love that Neil is literally challenging the testimonies of near-death experience here because, oh my gosh, that's the one get-out-of-jail-free card every time that they finally fall back on when they have nothing else to grip.
Own body in the bed. That's right. So there are experiments you can do. And by the way, there's a history of this. Did you know that late 1890s, was it? At the turn of the century, Wilhelm Röntgen, you realize he discovered X-rays. We call them X-rays. In Germany, he's German, they call them Röntgen rays, okay, as you'd expect. Right. Okay. They see through your body. What people were doing back then was, oh my gosh, if it can see through the body, maybe if I X-ray you the moment of your death, I will see the soul rise up out of your corporal existence. So they did these experiments. I mean, why not?
Yeah,
you got
the person's already dying. They don't have to worry about the radiation. That's for sure.
I know you're an avowed atheist. How can you be so certain that there is no supernatural, godlike entity out there, given that we know so little?
Well, first, I don't count myself among the ranks of avowed atheists, and I'll give a fast example why. A friend of mine went up to fix the Hubble telescope, okay, on the space shuttle, and on my Facebook feed, I said, "Godspeed to the space shuttle astronauts," and then in the comment thread, it said, "I thought you were an atheist. How could you possibly say that?" And so the fact that I gleefully said that, and atheists complained about it. Clearly, I'm not an atheist. Okay?
What are you?
My favorite Broadway musical of all time is Jesus Christ Superstar, which I saw in real time in New York City. I don't know that atheists can. So I don't.
So is there a God then, Neil deGrasse Tyson? I'll be about to have breaking news.
I don't know.
Is there a God?
Okay, so what I will tell you is that there are a lot of unknowns in the universe, but just because there are unknowns does not mean there's a deity in the unknown. If you're going to assign a deity to that which, that doesn't mean there isn't. That's correct.
So you're more of an open mind about this, right?
Everyone should. If the unknown is the unknown, but
yes, you should be open-minded to anything if the facts and data presents itself. But when you see a consistent track record of things in the natural world, to find out at the end, you know what, it was just a genie all along, or it was a wizard behind the curtain. And the wizard wasn't just a human, it was magic. That's why I'm not holding my breath, you know?
The track record of people saying God is behind this, and then you add a little science to it and you find out that we can completely explain it and control it, then the history of that exercise is so rich with science discovering the unknowns that were previously ascribed to deity, like lightning bolts and weather systems. There was Poseidon, there was Zeus, just look at the history of this. I'm not given reason to say we're going to find something, God is going to be at the center of that, and there'll be no science to apply. I'm going to look for the science first, because that's how the history of this exercise has unfolded. If you go to
that makes perfect sense. I agree. I think he's explaining exactly what I was saying.
If you go online and in a Google search, you type God's worshipped by humans. There's a tally of all the gods ever worshipped by humans in the history of civilization. And it just goes screen after screen after screen after screen. So when you say, do you believe in God? Which God? Is it Zeus? Is it Poseidon? Is it the God? Is it the Christian God? Because the God from the Old Testament is filled with wrath, okay? all right, and smoting and smiting and whatever the past tense verb is. And so,
why did it mute that? What did he say? That's kind of weird.
And the New Testament, that God is kinder, all right?
Nicer, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So you look at
that's arguable.
all of this and say, is that the God you want me to comment on? Or is there some other God? Typically, it's the Judeo-Christian blend there. In that context, I would say in my studies of the universe, I value evidence, and I don't see evidence for any kind of active intelligence or power over anything.
All right, that's enough. Pack your bags. We're done. Of course, there's more.
Yeah, but if you had evidence, show it to me. I'm all in.
I mean, and then there are certain things that are just a violation of the laws of physics, like Jesus walking on water. There's no way around that. Either he walked on water, and that's a miracle, or there's something else going on, whether it's the testimony is incorrect.
Or he was behind. He was behind water skis, right?
That could have been it.
Skiing on his feet.
Classic rationalism.
That'd be so funny. Barefoot
No, you're
water
right.
skiing.
There are people who are trying. Like, for example, there's a Jesus spider. There's a spider or a Jesus lizard. Jesus lizard that can walk on water.
Yes, I've seen that. It runs.
They call it the Jesus lizard.
Right.
But the Jesus lizard is walking on water because of surface tension. Plus, it's propelling itself so that part of the effort gets it back out of the little bit of water that it sunk into. Plus, he doesn't weigh very much. So I would say that's an insult to Jesus, because the lizard is using laws of physics to do it.
Right. Whereas Jesus had to violate the laws of physics.
Correct. In order for that to be the miracle described.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Correct. Right.
Either that or he had really cool sandals. Just awesome sandals.
Now, Hermes had flying sandals. Come on.
Those styrofoam sandals.
People who make this case that was the beginning and that there had to be something that provoked the beginning, do you give them an A at least for trying to reconcile faith and reason?
I don't think they're reconcilable.
What do you mean?
Well, so let me say that differently. All efforts that have been invested by brilliant people of the past have failed at that exercise. They just fail. And so I don't, the track record is so poor that going forward, I have essentially zero confidence, near zero confidence that there will be fruitful things to emerge from the effort to reconcile it.
Wow. That's pretty powerful statement.
So, for example, if you knew nothing about science and you read, say, the Bible, the Old Testament, which in Genesis is an account of nature. That's what that is. And I said to you, give me your description of the natural world based only on this. You would say the world was created in 6 days and that stars are just little points of light, much lesser than the sun. And in fact, they can fall out of the sky, right? Because that's what happens during the Revelation. One of the signs that the second coming is that the stars will fall out of the sky and land on Earth. To even write that means you don't know what those things are. You have no concept of what the actual universe is. So everybody who tried to make proclamations about the physical universe based on Bible passages got the wrong answer.
Wow. Cliff Kneckel, however you pronounce your name, the Bible's not a science book. You really need to pay attention and understand there are far brighter people who are studying this, seeing the problem. Yeah, stars falling out of the sky. If you knew what stars were, you wouldn't be saying that.
So what happened was, when science discovers things and you want to stay religious, or you want to continue to believe that the Bible is unerring, what you would do is you would say, well, let me go back to the Bible and reinterpret it. Then you'd say things like, oh, they didn't really mean that literally. They meant that figuratively. So this whole sort of reinterpretation of how figurative the poetic passages of the Bible are came after science showed that this is not how things unfolded. And so the educated religious people are perfectly fine with that. It's the fundamentalists who want to say that the Bible is the literally literal truth of God.
Right.
That's true. And want to see the Bible as a science textbook, who are knocking on the science doors of the schools trying to put that content in the science. Enlightened religious people are not behaving that way. They're saying, yes, science is cool, we're good with that, and use the Bible to get your spiritual enlightenment and your emotional fulfillment.
I have known serious religious people, not fundamentalists, who were scared when Carl Sagan opened his series with the words,
"The cosmos is all it is, or ever was, or ever will be."
That scared them because they interpret that to mean then if this is it, there's nothing else, no God and no life after.
For religious people, many people say, well, God is within you, or God, there are ways that people have shaped this, rather than God is an old gray-bearded man in the clouds. So if God is within you, what I'm sure Carl would say, in your mind, and we can measure the neurosynaptic firings when you have a religious experience. We can tell you where that's happening, when it's happening, what you're feeling like at the time. So your mind, of course, is still within the cosmos.
But do you have any sympathy for people who seem to only feel safe in the vastness of the universe you describe in your show if they can infer a personal God who makes it more hospitable to them, who cares for them?
In this, what we tell ourselves is a free country, which means you should have freedom of thought. I don't care what you think.
By the way, what he just described sounds like a child who needs a parent, who needs a mother or father or a loved one. And that's exactly what John Wathy has talked about in his book, that the neuro connection, or the neurology of a child born in a mother, it's dependent on its mom. And as we grow up, we're all wired, and in our early years, when we're the biggest sponge of all, absorbing everything, we're completely dependent on mother, father, parents. So yeah, I do feel bad that, humans feel like they're trapped, needing to have something as we grow up into adulthood. And there might be various reasons why humans need it. Traumas, struggles, you name it, lonely, depression, etc., that make them want that. So I do feel bad that that's a necessity, or it feels like they need to go to that position, even if it is contrary to the evidence, but they may be having an experience that makes them want that and have that.
I just don't. Go think whatever you want. Go ahead. Think that there's one God, 2 gods, 10 gods, or no gods. That is what it means to live in a free country. The problem arises is if you have a religious philosophy that is not based in objective realities that you then want to put in the science classroom. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to stand there and say, no, I'm not going to allow you in the science classroom. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just telling you in the science class, you're not doing science. This is not science. Keep it out. That's when I stand up. Otherwise, go ahead. I'm not telling you how to.
Don't you sometimes feel sad about breaking all these myths apart?
No, because I think it's.
I find a richness in it even more when I break them apart.
Some myths are deserve to be broken apart out of respect for the human intellect. That no, when you're writhing on the ground and froth is coming out of your mouth, you're having an epileptic seizure. You have not been invaded by the devil. We got this one figured out. Okay.
I think that's important that we understand that.
Okay. I mean, discovery moves on. So I don't mind the power of myth and magic, but take it to the next frontier and apply it there. Don't apply it in places where we've long passed what we already know what's going on.
I think you must realize that some people are going to go to your show at the planetarium and they're going to say, aha, those scientists have discovered God, because God, dark matter, is what holds this universe together.
So is that a question?
It's a statement. You know they're going to say that.
So
his face.
The history of discovery, particularly cosmic discovery, but discovery in general, scientific discovery, is one where at any given moment there's a frontier. And there tends to be an urge for people, especially religious people, to assert that across that boundary into the unknown lies the handiwork of God, This shows up a lot.
Or Satan.
Newton even said it. He had his laws of gravity and motion, and he was explaining the moon and the planet. He was there. He doesn't mention God for any of that. And then he gets to the limits of what his equations can calculate. So can't quite figure this out. Maybe God steps in and makes it right every now and then. That's where he invoked God. And Ptolemy, he bet on the wrong horse, but he was a brilliant guy. He formulated the geocentric universe with Earth in the middle. This is where we got epicycles and the machinations of the heavens. There was still a mystery to him. He looked up and uttered the following words: when I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies. These are the planets going through retrograde and back. The mysteries of the earth. When I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies, I no longer touch earth with my feet. I stand in the presence of Zeus himself and take my fill of ambrosia. What he did was he didn't invoke Zeus to account for the rock that he's standing on or the air he's breathing. It was this point of mystery, and in gets invoked God.
Yep.
This, over time, has been described by philosophers as the God of the gaps. If that's how if that's where you're going to put your God in this world, then God is an ever receding pocket of scientific ignorance. If that's how you're going to invoke God, if God is the mystery of the universe, these mysteries, we're tackling these mysteries one by one. If you're going to stay religious at the end of the conversation, God has to be more to you than just where science has yet to tread. So to the person who says maybe dark matter is God, if the only reason why you're saying it's because it's a mystery, then get ready to have that undone.
Oh, wow. That's well said. Well said.
Anybody know that there's a heaven, that they're going somewhere, that there's an afterlife? How could anyone know that?
No,
that boggles my mind.
They can believe they know.
Well, but belief is, I could believe that it's raining, but it ain't.
Well, this is the difference between believing something and using the methods and tools of science to establish what is objectively true. Yeah. And what is objectively true is something that is true outside of your belief system. That's what science is.
Facts and belief. I know the religious people believe, the scientist says prove. What do you believe? What do you think happens when we die?
Well, so I can make some unassailable statements about what happens when you die. So you spend your life eating food. Food has a calorie content, and calorie is a source of energy. Calorie is a unit of energy. You bring it in, and then the energy is available for you to maintain your body temperature at nearly 100 degrees. It's 98.6. How do you keep something at 100 degrees when nothing else around you is? You're burning energy to sustain that, because biologically, we need to be at that temperature to function, okay? You also need energy to walk and to move. That's why you eat food. The moment you die, what happens? You don't maintain the energy. Your temperature drops. How far does it drop? To room temperature. At a funeral, in the casket, if you touch the hand of the person in the casket, your first thought is, the body's cold. No, it's not. It's room temperature. But it's cold compared to 100 degrees. They're no longer burning this energy. Okay, so now, every one of your molecules has energy within it. If you get cremated, that energy gets released in the form of heat, and you heat the air, and that air radiates to space. You get buried, which is how I want my body to be disposed of. Bury me, because you know why? I don't want the energy content of my body to just get radiated out into space, of no use to anybody. Put me in the ground. Let the worms, microbes come in and out of my body, and the energy content of my body that I had assembled over my lifetime, consuming the flora and fauna of this earth, my body then returns to them. And thus is the cycle of life. I know that's going to happen because you can measure where the energy goes. And that's how I want to go out.
But you're not conscious, and that's for eternity, right?
Yeah, there's no evidence that I have any consciousness of anything. And by the way, is that so weird? Did you have consciousness before you were born? Were you saying, how come I'm not on Earth? My gosh, I need to be on Earth. Or where am I? No, there's just the state of non-existence. And so I'm not given any reason.
But now I am born, and I can't stand the thought of non-existence. See, I already have existence. Okay,
it is true. We fear death because we are born knowing only life.
Right.
I get that. However, I take another view because I've been asked, if you could live forever, would you?
Yes.
Okay, we're done with the interview. Yeah.
I don't know about live in this body. I mean, it'd be cool to have some experience because I already have it now, right? You don't want to I can relate, but I also imagine there's some good answer going to come from Neil here.
No, okay, sure, that's an attractive idea. But the way I look at it is the knowledge that I'm going to die that creates the focus that I bring to being alive. The urgency of accomplishment, the need to express love now, not later. If we live forever, why ever even get out of bed in the morning? Because you always have tomorrow. That's not the kind of life I want to lead.
But why? Don't you fear not being around?
I fear living a life where I could have accomplished something and didn't. That's what I fear. I don't fear death.
You don't fear the unknown?
I love the unknown. I love it. You know what I want on my tombstone? My sister has this in her notes, because in case I can't tell anyone after I die. On my tombstone, a quote from Horace Mann, great educator. Be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humanity. That's what I want on my tombstone.
But you don't fear or think about not being around.
My great regret for not being around would be, it would be kind of cool to see my kids continue to grow.
Don't you want to know that?
Yeah, that'd be fun. I want to see what inventions would make life easier, what clever discoveries or innovations would arise out of the collective brainwork of my species.
What do you think when you see religious people, when you see popes or rabbis or people who fervently believe, the Billy Grahams of the world, who are sincere and wonderful people?
Yeah, of course.
Who actually maybe delusional that they're going somewhere?
No, they're embedded in belief systems. And what I look at is I see all the belief systems, and when you line them up, they're not really compatible with one another.
Right.
So whatever they're believing, it can't be a truth that applies to everybody, because other people believe what they do with no less fervor. And so I sit back.
I can hear the apologists coming on saying, oh no, one can be right and all could be wrong. And it's like, well, I've looked at yours in depth, trust me. And I walk away with the same kind of human appearance, human fingerprints all over it, no divine fingerprints, just like the rest. So, unless there is a divine intervention, there's no me being persuaded of your particular belief.
And as a person who's interested in objective truths, and I say, well, it doesn't look like that's a path towards an objective truth. So let people continue to think and say what they want. But as a citizen of a country that is not founded on a religion, it's founded with sort of a secular construct in a way that protects whatever religion you want to express. This is protected in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't actually mention God.
Right.
Rather controversial in its day. And it doesn't mention God because they don't want legislation to tell you what God to worship. They knew this. They knew how governments can persecute people who had belief systems that didn't agree with the state. They knew this. So they created those freedoms. And so we have these freedoms. Go ahead. But if you're going to create legislation that has to apply to everybody, and you're now going to put your belief system into legislation. That is not a free and open democracy.
Do you see any intention or anything in like the ordering of the cosmos?
Yeah. So if intent is an interesting question when imposed on the universe. For the longest while, philosophically, people imagined that the universe was some perfect place. Earth was a haven for life, especially human life, and everything is just right for us. And that would leave you thinking that there's some intent to the universe, that the universe is serving our needs. And of course, this is, as you would suspect, very strong in religious philosophies, where the adherents of that particular religion are sure that they are more special than any other
This is definitely the case.
religion, or more correct in so doing. When you look at the large-scale universe and you see these structures, what you have to ask yourself is, suppose all the galaxies were exactly equally spaced, rather than in these filaments and structures. Perhaps you'd be asking the same thing. Oh, look at, is there some intent here? Look how beautifully ordered it is. Ask yourself, is there some configuration of the universe where you wouldn't ask that? Because if there isn't, then the question doesn't actually aim towards a unique answer.
Yeah, it is what it is, in a sense. We have this particular universe, and no matter what style it was, disordered or ordered, if they were all equal distance or if they weren't equal distance, we would still be trying to think about it in some way. It's like the puddle idea. Look at this. The puddle says to itself, I fit this hole perfectly in the road, as if it was created for that hole on the road, but technically it's just what filled the hole. And so how you're looking at it is always going to be how you're perceiving this whole outlook.
If anything you see out there looks like it's ordered to you, then the question, you can't ask the question. You have to be able to ask the question such that if it were this other way, you would reject it. Now, the people who said Earth is a haven and all this, the fossil record argues differently. 97.8% of all life that ever existed is now extinct. That's the sign not of a planet that loves its life. That's a sign of a planet that wants it to get the life the hell off.
Right. That's the anti-haven. That's
right. Yeah. Right. We are alive not because...
Think about that. Almost 99% of all species have gone extinct, right? Again, that's a very powerful point about God making this earth and wanting us to thrive and live, and this is our haven, and it's created good so that man can dwell, etc. There's so many things, if you look at it just from this angle, that makes you question that.
But in spite of it, from tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, droughts, floods, every year they kill thousands of people. Thousands.
You're kind of bumming me out, I have to say.
I'm not done. Not to mention asteroid impacts. Took out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Earth is in a shooting gallery. You want to say there's intent? Yeah, the intent is to kill us. Okay? There's your intent.
Wow.
So the more you look at the universe, the less clear any purposeful intent there is.
Wow.
On that upbeat note, we're going to need to.
Wait. You want to upbeat?
Give us one.
When the asteroid comes.
Yes.
Okay. If we have people who reject the science world, and the asteroid is headed towards us, they will be doing a number of things. Praying, certainly. They'll be running away from the impact point. They'll be buying toilet paper and bottled water. And whereas if you had scientists in your midst and engineers, when the asteroid comes, they say, how can I deflect that? Two completely different outlooks on your fate. So if I'm bumming you out by saying there's disaster that will kill us, I'd like to lift you up again by saying it may be that innovations in science and technology may be the only thing that can save us from ourselves.
You debummed me. That's perfect.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the science thinking, and it's an absolute wonderful thing to listen to him describe science in such a manner that does seem to compete with religion. And he's a bit pessimistic on there ever being a unified ideal, especially with the versions of religion that are currently thriving in the world we live in. Some are bending to it. Some are bending to acceptance of the facts because the facts are facts. and they don't want to be dishonest when it comes to those facts. But there's still a bunch of coping, I feel like, that's going on in defense of things that just are not provable or even can be falsified, or at least very doubtful in light of the data that we look at the ancient world. There's really no reason to believe those things. So anyway, what are your thoughts about Neil deGrasse Tyson? Drop the comment down below. I'm literally paying attention. I like seeing what people have to say about these things. If you like my reaction videos, hit the subscribe button and check off the bell so that YouTube will notify you every time we drop a new one. I'm going to be doing these all the time. Like the video, share it out there, and until next time, see you then.